This conference will now be recorded.
I guess Sulab and Nicole, we are ready to get going.
I believe so. Sulap?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and call the Long Range Transportation Plan Advisory Committee meeting to order. Before we get started, I'll go ahead and read the statement regarding virtual meetings. In light of the 2020 COVID-19 virus and current guidance regarding physical distancing to reduce the potential for spread, meetings of the Richmond Regional Planning District Commissions have transitioned to a virtual format. Regional public bodies were granted authority to conduct meetings electronically pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3702.2 and related legislation approved by the General Assembly of Virginia during the period of the Governor's State of Emergency Declaration for COVID-19. While we do not know the exact duration of the current practice of electronic meetings, we will continue to function in this manner until such time as it is deemed appropriate to return to in-person meetings. Staff provided notice of this meeting and the means by which we are virtually gathered to members of the public on August 20th, 2020, through electronic posting on the ConnectRVA website and email distribution of notice to members, alternates, and known interested parties, including the media. This meeting will be recorded. Audio and visual recordings of the meeting and materials we posted on the ConnectRVA website within 48 hours of this meeting. Any member of the public participating as an observer during the meeting today may submit comments or questions at any time during the meeting via email at info@planrva.org or by using the online chat functions of the meeting platform. Those individuals who are observing by phone may be called upon to share questions or comments. This meeting agenda includes 2 opportunities for members of the public to address this body. All comments and questions submitted during the meeting will be reviewed following the meeting, and to the extent practical, responses will be provided or posted on the ConnectRVA website. We ask that everyone identify themselves first when speaking so that we can more accurately record the activities of the meeting. All lines have been muted by the meeting administrator to minimize additional noise and feedback. You may unmute your line at any time to request acknowledgement from the chair. Staff will be monitoring the chat functions throughout the meeting to assure we do not overlook anyone wishing to participate as appropriate in the discussion. Does anyone have any questions regarding the process for assuring effective facilitation of this meeting or how members of the public may participate? Since there aren't any questions, I'll ask our clerk to certify we have followed the approved procedures for appropriate notice of the meetings and the means by which we are convening.
This is Nicole Mueller, and I can certify that we have followed the approved procedures.
Thank you. I guess now we'll go into the roll call of the meeting. Please indicate your presence by saying aye when your name is called during the roll call. Anyone who wishes to identify themselves following the roll call members will be invited to do so. So, Ms. Mueller, I guess I'll turn it over to you for the roll call.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start with Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith. Ms. Benedict.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Bridewell. Ms. Erickson. Mr. Steele. Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Present.
Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Aye.
Ms. Deemer. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Present.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Aye.
Mr. Howland. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos. Mr. Tucker. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. GRTC Transit System, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross. RMTA, Ms. Simmons. Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Present.
Right Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
CRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Sparks. VDOT, Ms. McAdory. Mr. Herman.
Here.
VCU, Mr. Leonard.
Present.
NAACP, Mr. Johnson. Richmond Area Bicycling Association, Mr. Burnley.
Present.
Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Tran. Senior Connections, Mr. Williams.
Present.
RVA Rapid Transit, Mr. Campbell. Bike Walk RVA, Ms. Gordon.
Present.
Port of Virginia, Ms. Nelson.
Present.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Present.
Southern Environmental Law Center, Mr. Pollard.
Here.
Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities, Mr. Reveley.
Aye.
Virginians for High Speed Rail, Mr. Plower. Federal Highways Administration, Mr. Duran. And Tri-Cities MPO, Mr. Swikowski. And this concludes the roll call, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Are there any members that we missed during the roll call that are here? Do we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe we need a quorum for this meeting.
Okay. All right, so we'll move along to the approval of the meeting summary from May 28th. Are there any questions, comments, concerns regarding the meeting summary included in the packet? Since I don't hear any questions or comments regarding those meeting summaries, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, the public comment period. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the committee at this time? Seeing as there's no one that's joined us that would like to address the committee, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, the LRTP process update task 2, vision, goals, and objectives. And I think Sulab and Chet will provide an overview of this particular agenda item.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. This is Sulab Ariel. I'm going to update to everybody about the task which we staff have been working in past couple of months since we had our meeting. The last meeting was in May, so it's been almost 3 months. Basically, staff have been mainly working on task 2 and task 3 within this timeline. I'll talk about task 2 first, which is basically the strategic direction in which we decide or develop vision, goals, and objectives. RRTP process flow, everybody is familiar with it. We are in the second phase, which is the strategic direction, which will lead us to planning and then programming and evaluation and then adoption. So just a reminder that we are in, this is about the second phase of LRTP. So for the development of goals and objectives and vision, as recommended by LRTP Advisory Committee, staff developed regional goals and priorities survey. The survey went live on June 24th, 2020. and it closed around midnight of August 15th. So roughly 8 weeks of public input. We had a tremendous participation in this outreach effort. That the web page in the RRTPO website had 6,857 views. That's a lot. We also had 3 likes. As you can see, the heart shape in the screen capture, 3, and then completed surveys 501. So this was the first stem of staff developing a survey based on Google Forms. Um, we received some emails from public stating that it was a little bit difficult to complete this survey in the cell phone. As it wasn't very much easy to do that in the cell phone. It was mainly uh, easier to do this in the desktop version. So maybe because of that, the views are we have so many views and then only 501 completed surveys. But still, 501, that's a good number. So I'll be presenting the results of the survey. So let's talk about age. The median age of the respondent was like 41 years, but we got people from all the spectrum, even got a person who was under 18. We got a lot of youngsters from 18 to 25, but the major age was within 26 to 55, and then we got some elderly as well. So it represents a broad spectrum of all different ages. We asked the question for the where the respondents, where they live and work. The survey was a little bit skewed towards Richmond, as more than half of the almost half of the respondents lived or worked in Richmond. But as you can see, we have participation from all the localities. We also had participation from some people who lived outside of the Richmond region, but who worked inside the Richmond region, or who lived in Richmond region and went outside to work. So all aspects were covered. Looking at the detailed residence of the respondents by zip code, we see that almost all areas of the region have been covered. Had people from all the almost all the areas have participated, except for some areas in Western Goochland and Northwestern Hanover County. Most of the areas have covered. We asked the question, what mode of transportation do you use, or how do you usually get to work or school? And almost 70% of people who were answering the survey said drive alone. We had a lot of people who said bike. I think based on the current situation, we had a lot of people saying work from home, but the question was clear that we asked them before the COVID situation, not presently, but there might be a difference in understanding. Then we had work as well as a bus, GRTC carpool. And then we had a few respondents saying others, which included multimodal travel, including drive, bike, walk, or using park and ride lots or transit. And we had a couple of people saying rail travel, probably people going to DC every week. We had a couple of people saying air travel as well, and then on-demand transit, ride-sharing like Uber, Lyft, scooter, moped, and obviously we had a student using VCU Ram Ride. So here again, a broad spectrum of people using different modes, all covered. The drive alone ratio for mode of transportation in the Richmond region is around 86-87% based on census. This is a little bit low, so here it's around 68 or 70%. So it's not the actual mode is not representative. And then we also asked the question, the average commute times. So we can see that the lowest commute time for Richmond is for Richmond, which is less than 7 minutes. The average commute time is 15.4 minutes. And then people coming from outside the region or going outside the region, it's almost 44 minutes. This is an interesting graphic. We also asked the respondent questions. What time do you usually leave home to go to work? And then what time do you usually leave work or school to go to home? And we can see that it's throughout the day. It starts people start leaving around 4:30, and it continues throughout the day. The peak period, based on our respondent survey, for the morning peak was around 8 a.m. and for the evening peak was around 5 p.m., which matches the current peak hours in the region. But it's amazing to see that based on only 501 respondents, we can see that the starting time and the leaving office time that varies throughout the day. Now we come into the meat of our surveys, in which we asked about the transportation priorities for the respondents, giving them six different priorities, which has been adopted by the state for smart scale as well. Based on the respondents' answers, and then the numbers here are the mean. We had each category on a scale of 1 to 5, and the respondent could choose between those, and these are the mean. So safety was the highest ranked priority for transportation in the Richmond region, followed by environmental quality, accessibility, land use, economic development, and congestion was the least important one based on this survey. And then we also asked the detail about safety, accessibility, environmental quality, land use, all those different priorities. And we have the mean for each one. Like for safety, safety for bicyclists and pedestrians, that came at the highest, 4.5. Safer routes to school, safety for transit users, and then safety for drivers, and then functional emergency evacuation routes. So we have, I won't go into detail of each of these categories, but we have them for all these categories, and this would be important while we'll develop the project prioritization tool so that we can weight based on what the public wants. Same thing for economic development and congestion mitigation. This one, we asked the respondents, how would you like to get around in the future? And we give them different choices, and each respondent could pick one or several of those. Let's say if we have 10 different choices, there's a lot of permutations and combinations of those. So this is the 10 top most frequent, which has the highest frequency. It's amazing to see that number one priority for the future is, again, a drive alone and autonomous vehicle. That's what people think to get around in the future. But we can see themes like work, bike, bus service, bus rapid transit, light rail throughout this. It's a common theme throughout the top 10 results. And then finally, we are asked an open-ended question about, is there anything else you would like to say about your transportation priorities? We got 211 responses, and staff is still processing them. I have listed out a few examples of what people said. I would read out a couple. A mass transit system that everybody wants to use should be a priority for a city like Richmond. A metro rail, a rail line, additional improvements to interstates, expanded Richmond International Airport. Bring back Richmond streetcars, eliminate tolls, expanded rideshare, intermodal safety, more bike lanes. So it's not just about highways. This is just a brief capture of those responses, and it covers almost all the multimodal transportation that we have to address, including highway, rail, transit, bike ped, intermodal, um, the Richmond International Airport. So seems like it's pretty comprehensive. Staff would process all these, and we need to answer to all these comments once we in the process, and that would be documented in the document, which would be complementary to the main document of LRTP. So from here, where we also have started a complimentary survey which went out live this week, and based on the results of that survey and also based on the priorities of this survey, staff would determine the goals and the vision as wished by the public, and then come up with staff recommendation, which would come to the LRTP advisory committee, and then we would have an interactive session to discuss about what exactly would be the wording for goals and objectives and the vision. And then Chet would talk about the vision and goals survey, the MetroQuest survey, which just went out live last week.
Yeah, thanks, Sulab. I am going to try and share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, let me make you a presenter.
I think I got it.
Yeah.
So I have brought up the MetroQuest survey, which just went live last week, as Sulab said. And it's, he mentioned the Google form. That was our first real attempt at putting out a survey, and getting 500 survey responses was pretty satisfying to us. One of the things that we did learn from folks is that it was hard to bring that survey up and make it useful on a mobile platform. So we're working with VDOT, and we put together this MetroQuest survey, and I'll provide the address later, but you all should have gotten a notification that the survey was live. Hopefully you've been able to share it. And I just wanted to briefly go through and highlight some of the sections of it. It's a very simple survey. There's 5 tabs. The first is kind of a background, and if you scroll through at the bottom, you can see different facts about the TPO and what our core functions are, ways people can see what's going on with the link to the TPO website. And basically you hit begin. And the purpose of this survey is kind of to build on the priorities survey, which Sulab just presented. And this is really focusing in on vision and goals and priority and strategies. So taking what we've heard from people in terms of what we need to be focusing on, and then really dialing in more on what those particular goals could be of the plan. So in terms of structure of the survey, each of these tabs has directions. So there'll be a pop-up window. So the prioritizing goals, here's what you want to do. And we have had a couple questions, but the instructions say, please drag 5 of the items above the line in your preferred order. And basically you would go in and you can click on any one of these items. Say, so safety was one of the priorities that was identified. You can see a brief description of what safety means, and then you would drag that above the dotted line. And then you could pick something else, say environment, pick any 5, just so we can get a better idea of what's most important to folks. Maintenance and operations. So now I have 5 goals that are above the line, and then you would hit next task. So it takes those 5 goals, or those 4 goals that I selected: safety, environment, maintenance and operations, and resiliency, and then it allows you to dial in a little bit more in terms of what the strategies should be and which ones are most important. So for safety, for example, you have, say, injuries and fatalities, Vision Zero objectives. Let's say I think that's a 4 for Vision Zero, and then safety investments is a 2, just for example. And then you can go scroll down the left side to the environment strategies, the maintenance and operations strategies, and the resiliency strategies, and rank all of those things in terms of what's most important. Now, if somebody selects different goals in the previous tab, those goals would show up here instead. So once the survey is completed, we'll have a better understanding of what goals are most important and start to be able to rank the strategies and develop kind of the framework for the plan document itself. And then the last request in this survey is the vision statement. So the text here says the vision statement should reflect what our region should aspire to be by the time we get to the year 2045. Please complete the sentence and tell us your vision for transportation. So if you hit start, there's a sample vision statement, which could be used in any NPO across the country, to be honest, to develop and maintain safe, efficient, environmentally compatible transportation system that provides convenient choices for accessing destinations throughout the urban area. Just as a to prime the pump, for example. But then what we're asking folks to do is to develop their own vision. What's your vision for the Richmond region? And you're able to submit that. And then the last page is essentially a stay involved. How can we best keep you included in the loop? And we're asking some of the same questions that we did in the priority survey, like home zip code, work zip code, so that we can start to try and make connections between who took the first survey, who took the second one, in general terms, like where they lived, where they worked, those kinds of things. And then some optional questions: what's your age group, what race do you most closely identify, and then an opportunity to subscribe for updates via email and share any other comments that people might have. We provide a link to the LRTP website, and that's it. So essentially, this could be a 5 to 10 minute survey that is totally accessible on a mobile platform. So we're hopeful that all of you can share this with your constituents and with your mailing lists. And our goal is to beat that 501 surveys that we did on the first one, and make this really useful for your purposes as we evaluate vision, goals, and strategies over the next few months. With that, I'd be happy to turn it back over to Sulab if there's any questions on either of those.
I have one question. In talking to our public information officer, she was wondering if you all have done any Facebook posts that we could share on our Facebook page for the survey.
Yes, I believe that we did do a post last week, but I can verify that and certainly make sure that you all are aware of it. It would have come from, I mean, if you're subscribing to the RRTPO Facebook page, it would be on there.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Is there any other questions regarding these two surveys?
This is Catherine from Chesterfield. Chet, you may have said this when you first started your presentation, but how long is this survey going to be live, the MetroQuest one?
Yeah, that's a great question, Catherine. Right now, it is set to be live until the middle of October. I think depending on the response rates and where things go, we could certainly change that. So at this point, it's fluid. Really want to see what kind of responses we get, and we also want to be aware of our overall time frame in terms of developing the plan. But yeah, we don't want to make this available for too short of a period of time so that it isn't meaningful. So I mean, at this point, I would say that we'll have it open at least through the month of September.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So I guess are we ready to move on to agenda item number 4, the task 3 planning?
Yes, thank you. So the next update is about task 3, which is the universe of project screening. Again, the same LRTP process flow. We're talking about the planning phase, in which based on the first phase in which we develop the needs, we develop the projects based on those needs, screen those needs, and develop the projects. And the outcome of this phase would be a universe of projects which would be ranked and prioritized in the next phase of LRTP. So staff sent an email to the LRTP Advisory Committee this Monday with the issues spreadsheet, draft, universe of project spreadsheets, and the guidelines. So it was basically everything which needed to work on this. Staff did start the process of screening of transportation projects, mainly based on whether the project was already been developed in the recommended as recommendation in the different studies and plan which we screened. Um, I would say, like, for all the issues which we have listed, I think 20% of the issues have projects now. We still need projects for 80%. So staff is willing to work with the project champions to develop the project. And the issues spreadsheet, as well as a draft of invoice, was divided or broken down into different categories, so that it won't be overwhelming for everybody, so people can focus on what they want to look at, or what the project champion would look at. As I mentioned earlier, the final objective is obviously to streamline the list of projects by all transportation mode, ranked and prioritized. So that's the final outcome which we want. So this is the list of project champions which staff have recommended. If anyone wants to be a champion or anything needs to be changed, please let us know. So for transit, obviously GRTC, RRTPO, as well as the localities would be the champion. For park and ride, ride finders have placed interest on being the champion, RRTPO, as well as the localities. For active transportation, localities, VDOT, and RRTPO. For rail, we have asked DRPT to be the project champion. If there is any airport-related project, the Capital Region Airport Commission would be the champion. For freight, intermodal, and Richmond Marine Terminal, it'll basically be RRTPO, VDOT, and anything related to the port would be City of Richmond. System residency, I think we might have a couple of issues on that. We RRTPO and VDOT. For highways, except for interstates and freeways, jurisdictions, individual jurisdiction would be the champions. And for multi-jurisdiction interstate and freeway projects, VDOT would be the champion with RRTPO as well. For bridge projects, VDOT, and then for downtown expressway, RMTA. So the project development requirement, as we have developed, is it should address an issue from the issue spreadsheet, which was adopted by this LRTP Advisory Committee on May 28th. So it should have, the issue should be present there. The project should be inside the RRTPO MPA boundary, which is the Metropolitan Planning Area boundary. Any project which is outside the MPA boundary, but in Richmond region, if it's in the rural localities of Charles City, New Kent, Powhatan, and Goochland, that would be logically covered in the rural long-range transportation plan. In Chesterfield County, if it's outside the RRTPO boundary, it would fall in Tri-Cities MPO, and those issues should be covered in Tri-Cities MPO's LRTP, which would probably kickstart sometime soon. Projects would qualify based on the project inclusion guidelines. So this guideline was, we have discussed this a lot of times. I have sent the different versions to the LRTP Advisory Committee, and based on the comments which I have received, we have modified. And along with this email this week, I have also sent the project inclusion guidelines. So the project also should be a new project, which means that it cannot be a project which has already been funded or which is in the SIP. If there is a significant change in the project description, then that project could be included in the LRTP. Obviously, we need the location details. If it's a roadway project, the starting point, the ending point, the mile length. We need the anticipated project cost, at least the capital cost. And we'll work out to get some kind of thumb rule for the maintenance cost. And if it's a transit project, operations cost might be important as well. For complex projects like the interchanges, it would be good to have conceptual sketches because we need to code those into the travel demand model for the project prioritization process. So we need conceptual sketches. Project readiness, that's not required, but in our project prioritization process, we'll provide bonus points if the project has already done environmental assessment or environmental impact study, the IJR, IMR, or any kind of public outreach like meetings or surveys. So that would get bonus points. And then finally, the most important one is that we want the localities to have a political will to proceed with the project. We don't want any controversial projects in the LRTP. Everybody should agree on it. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, once we develop all the projects, we'll get all the projects in one list, one simple list, with the description and the anticipated project cost and the champion. And then that list would be circulated to everybody. And once everybody is fine with that list, it would go for the next phase, which is the prioritization and ranking. So that's all I have for this. Any questions before I go to the spreadsheet so that I can run through the spreadsheet which I sent?
Hey, Sulab, this is Tiffany. With the location details, is that the same as kind of like the details of the project description when we're talking about it? So it's like the term, like the beginning and the end of the project, and then the actual improvement. Okay.
Yeah.
This is Trip Pollard. How I noticed a number of the things on a quick look at this chart are pretty general. For example, a capacity constraint in a certain area. Is it just up to, at this point, the locality whose tab that was under, for example, to develop how you address that capacity constraint? Because there are a lot of different ways to address sometimes some of the needs that were identified.
So ideally, we would want something more mature than just a very generic solution. So if there's a study, it would exactly record what kind of solution, whether a lane needs to be added, or whether a parallel route needs to be done, or whether a transit should be provided, things like that. That's something, ideally, we want that. But for LRTP, we are looking at projects or issues which might come in the future, maybe around 2035 or 2040. For those, we don't have any developed any mature project now. So it's up to the locality or the champion to state the importance of that and come up with projects.
So just to be clear, your answer was yes, it's just up to the locality for the project champion. Okay.
Right.
The Trip, I think staff will also be leaning into that a little bit too to come up with possible solutions. We're just not there yet.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other questions before I go to the spreadsheet?
This is Trip Pollard. I guess I have one other question. You mentioned that there would be bonus points if a project has, for example, completed an EIS or an EA. What if it's completed the EIS or the EA, but it shows there are major problems with the project? Does it still get bonus points?
That's a difficult question. It depends. It depends upon what project it is. and we as a group have to decide that. Ideally, we are just talking about straightforward giving bonus points if those have been done. If there is any negative impact based on those, we have to decide whether we give bonus points or not.
Yeah, this is Chad. I mean, I think what Sulab's talking about is kind of formalizing our ability to come up with a framework to have the conversation with the advisory committee. I mean, there's going to be a case-by-case analysis of projects that, like you mentioned, Trip, where there may be some mitigating factors that don't always agree with this initial metric. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go over the spreadsheet which I sent last week, I guess the beginning of this week. So these are basically the same issues which all of us adopted in May. I have just broken down by different categories: the active transportation, transit, park and ride, rail, freight intermodal, interstate projects, bridges, and then localities, and then some of the issues which were deemed as policy program needs or local needs, things like that, and then whatever the comments we received from the public. So basically it's the same spreadsheet which I have just broken down for the A's so that it's not overwhelming for all of us. So this is just for the reference. Once we develop, we work on the project universe of project spreadsheet, which is the other spreadsheet. So so this is the one which is the important one for now, which we have to work on. So based on whatever the breakup was in the issues, we have the similar tabs here. So so we have the issue deficiency description, and then the ID just for the reference, which is coming from the issue spreadsheet. And then based on what staff have reviewed, we have staff notes. And there is a blank column for LRTP advisory committee if we want to provide any notes or any additional project description. Where possible, we have the project description. We have the project inclusion type based on the category. So if we scroll down, we have the different categories in which a project can be included, and everything is listed there. And based on what category the project was included, it's here. Obviously, project champion, project location, project type, and then where possible, we have the capital cost and the year of estimate. That's also important because a lot of our projects coming from previous years. So we have to, once we get the estimates for all the projects, we have to convert the estimates into $2020 so that we are comparing apples to apples. And then we have a category in which we have listed out if the project is included in local and regional plans, whether the project has already been included in the comprehensive plan or our previous LRTP, and for transit, if whether it's located in, has already been discussed in Transit Vision 1, Vision Phase 1 and 2. And then project readiness, as I discussed, if there has been anything like EA or EIS, IGRs, IMRs, or any public outreach. So it's basically the same for each category. Some of the tabs have been filled more, like the freight one. I think we have a lot of already been filled. Interstate freeway projects, a lot of project description needs to be there. Mainly we have I-64, I-95, I-195, 288. Some of the solutions might be from what the findings of I-95 corridor study. I-64 corridor study, I guess that would be completed soon so that we can incorporate the findings of I-64 in these. And then we also have some IJRs already completed, so that could be included as well. Some STARS project for 288, I think projects would come out from that. So this still needs to be worked out. For bridges, we only had like 16 projects which qualified based on our project inclusion guidelines. We have two different costs for bridges. One is the repair cost and one is the replacement cost. And I think we need the experts on what would be the requirement, whether the bridge needs to be replaced or just repairment is fine. So VDOT is champion for this, and I think we can decide based on that. And then we have the individual localities, Chesterfield, Henrico, Hanover, Ashland, Richmond, Goochland, Powhatan, and then the policy and program issues which were based on the issues spreadsheet, and we did the project inclusion type based on whether the policy would qualify in this round of LRTP or not. And most of the some of the bike ped projects which were not covered in active transportation, and some of the rail projects do qualify. So we have these highlighted ones are the projects which do qualify. So we have to look at details on these as well. And then we have the public comments. Some of the public comments, if it's a sidewalk, kind of local thing, which it doesn't qualify for LRTP. So it's a local and programmatic project which is non-inclusive. Sometimes it's a program policy thing. Sometimes it's another which doesn't qualify. But the ones highlighted in yellow are the ones which the public has raised, and these could qualify based on the project inclusion guidelines. So we have to work with the respective champions to address this, whether by projects or by just saying that it's not matured now. The ones highlighted in orange, that has already been addressed by other issues. The white ones, those don't qualify. And then finally, a reference for everybody. These are the projects which have been unfunded since the development of last long-range transportation plan, which is Plan 2040. Also includes projects from smart scale round 1, 2, and 3, which haven't been funded. Maybe I've missed a couple of those, so I think we need to be clear whether if the project has already been funded, we need to cross those out. So again, the highlighted, the orange highlighted ones are the ones which do qualify based on the project inclusion guidelines for our LRTP project. You can see that the projects which were in the previous LRTP do not qualify in this round, as the project inclusion guidelines have changed. And then similarly, we have projects from smart scale round 1, 2, and 3, which are obviously the highlighted ones are the ones which do qualify. Smart scale round 4, I haven't included those because we haven't got the results yet. So, but those projects could be in the LRTP as well if it's not covered. So I think the next on the next phase would be giving champions some time to digest this, and then staff will follow with the champions about maybe around after Labor Day to follow up with the development, and we'll all work together to develop projects. I think that's all I have.
This is Ben. Did you say that you that this thing we just looked at is something you have sent out to us?
Yes, sir. I sent out an email. I think this Monday. It should be in the email. If not, I can send that again.
With that list, as you just went over it, with the various colors on it and comments.
Yes, sir. Yeah, everything.
Thank you.
So Sulab, to clarify, I guess our homework as a committee is look through that spreadsheet that you sent out and just showed us, and then later on in September, you'll be reaching out to the champions to get more details on the different projects that need additional description and any other projects that those champions may have.
Right.
Is
Yeah,
that
that's
accurate?
the plan. So once the champions review their respective spreadsheet, or it's open to anybody. Anybody can review whatever category they want, but it might be overwhelming if everybody reviews everything. So I guess it would be, I would reach out to the champions for that specific category.
And then another question I had is I noticed that I think New Kent and Charles City didn't have an individual tab on the spreadsheet. Does that mean that they don't have any projects identified that are not on an interstate or that kind of thing, or what does that mean?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of bridge projects, some active transportation related projects, and obviously interstate projects in Charles City and New Kent. But we didn't have any other, based on what we had collected and what we had got feedback from. We didn't have any other issues apart from those in those two localities.
Thank you.
And what would you like us to do with this, Sulab? Hello, Sulab. This has been. What are you asking us to do with this?
Just review your areas of expertise and provide us comments. And if there's already been talk about the project, and if the staff haven't covered that, just mention that.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Sulab, Champ here.
Mm-hmm.
What about inclusion of other projects that may not actually be listed on that may be identified in in the long horizon?
So we have identified a lot of issues. So for highways, based on the travel demand model run, future congestion or future capacity increment needs, we have identified all those issues. So if it's important enough, I think a project can be developed based on those identified issues. So we have 1,080 issues identified, and we have only developed 20% of projects based on those. So if the issue is there, we can definitely, and it qualifies for the inclusion, the project qualifies for the project inclusion guidelines, we can definitely include that. But as I mentioned earlier, we need certain things for the projects to be included. Obviously, the project description detail, we need the cost estimates, things like that.
Yeah, Champ, this is Chet. I mean, I think that's one of the things that staff is going to be working on as kind of a next step in this universe of projects is going back and looking at the issues and identifying any gaps where there isn't something already identified to address them. And then we do have, we're going to be working with VDOT to help develop cost estimates where those are needed. And it's going to be an iterative process to kind of identify additional projects that may be necessary at a planning level. This is planning level. Yeah.
So again, it sounds like our homework will be review the spreadsheet, and then again, you'll be reaching out, staff will be reaching out to the champions to flush out some of these projects. And if anyone has any comments, they can email you, Sulab. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns about what was discussed in agenda item number 4? So I guess we'll move along to agenda item number 5, future meeting topics. Chet, Sulab, did you want to go over any of those in particular that are listed in the agenda?
Sure. So we have listed out a few topics which would be topics in the future. The first one, obviously, is the vision, goals, and objective development. We are hoping to get, after the second survey, we got results from that. We are hoping to have a meeting, maybe that would be around October, November. That would be an interactive session to formulate the vision and goals once we get the results from the vision and goals survey. So staff will incorporate the findings from both the surveys and develop a staff recommendation, and we'll have a whole session of interactive session with the LRTP advisory committee to formulate the words, the exact wordings, what we want to use for our vision and goals. So September, October timeframe. It might be a little bit earlier in September, but that could definitely be in October. The second thing is the universe of projects, project discussion. So once we have developed significant projects based on the individual conversation with the champions, staff would provide a recommended list of projects which would go for project prioritization and ranking, so that each project would be discussed. That we're thinking maybe October, November, December timeframe, so that everybody is fine with the list. So basically a buy-in meeting with all the projects. And probably November, December timeframe. I think that's our target. It's August now, and we need to adopt the LRTP by next September. So we just have one more year. The third thing is the project scoring and evaluation. So staff has been working to develop an evaluation process. The plan is to move the RRTPO planning process in a direction of performance-based planning and programming, which has been directed by the federal regulations, MAP 21, as well as FASTAC. Staff will be accessing the degree to which any given projects will advance the reason towards achieving one or multiple transportation goals, and a set of transportation performance measures, which would again be established in task 2. Staff is considering the possibility to use some of the performance measures as used in Commonwealth's smart scale project evaluation process. Also, we have to look at the availability of data and staff in capacity, as
Oh my God.
it takes a lot of data as well as staff capacity and time to evaluate the projects as done in smart scale. So staff might work on developing and is developing on working on a hybrid approach in which the project scoring would be based like smart scale, and then we would have something of our own as well. Staff is working on that. I guess the meeting to discuss this would be around maybe early next year or late this year. Chet, you wanted to add something on this about the CBTA as well?
Yeah, part of the CBTA framework is that they need to methodically address regional priorities. So the 35% of funding that's goes to the CBTA is specifically to address regional needs. And one of the things that RRTPO hopes to do is to use our project scoring and evaluation and our revised prioritization tools that we'll use for the LRTP to help the CBTA identify regional priorities. So the timing, I think, is good, and the way that SULAB has the schedule set up would help lend our work to the CBTA to help have a common vision for the region.
Thank you, Chet. The fourth thing is the environmental justice as well as accessibility assessment. So staff have identified 6 traditionally disadvantaged population groups, and also come up with a methodology in which we determine the communities of concern. taking the minority and low income as primary factors, and then other populations like the zero car household, elderly, limited English, and population with disability as secondary factors. So staff is finalizing a methodology for qualitative analysis in conjunction with the spatial analysis, which would identify the traditionally disadvantaged groups. And the aim of this is to see what level of investment these areas would receive in terms of transportation spending as part of the LRTP Connect RVA 2045. So staff has done a good progress on this, and we'll probably present our methodology by the LRTP Advisory Committee's meeting probably again around December, January timeframe. The accessibility assessment, this is something which was recommended by the 2017 Federal Certification Review. Staff is developing a methodology to include an analysis for accessibility to opportunities, which would include employment, education, healthcare, parks, grocery stores, by 4 modes of transportation: driving, transit, walking, and biking. And this would be a comparative assessment of the benefits and burdens across the spectrum of EJ and non-EJ population. The analysis would have basically 3 scenarios, which would be, one would be the base year, the second would be the no build 2045, and then the final would be the full implementation of all the projects in Connect RVA 2045. Staff is also working to develop this, and probably around the same time as we present the environmental justice, we'd present this methodology to the LRTP Advisory Committee as well. The final item is the document design. Staff is thinking of a major change from what we did in last 5 rounds of LRTP. The document would be infographic heavy. We'll use plain English, and staff is working to create a template and reviewing documents from different MPOs. Staff, once the research has been done and we finalize that, we'll present that to the LRTP Advisory Committee for their comments, again around January, December timeframe. What we are targeting now is a main document, which would be 50 pages. That would be ideal to have the main document 50 pages, which would be mainly targeted to the public as well as the policy board, and then a series of appendices presenting all technical analysis targeted to the transportation community. And it would be both in PDF form, and sometimes it would be in web form as well. Some of the maps which would not be ideally good to be presented in static form, we would have online maps for those. And we'll have a series of appendices with the main document. So again, once we have finalized the template, we'll ask for your comments around maybe December, January timeframe again. And that's all I have for the future meeting topics.
So Sulabh, Ben, again, a question about the accessibility assessment process. Sometimes is that about, in the past, some of the studies for low-income people have concentrated simply on access to public transportation from the place they live. But there's been no evaluation of employment centers in terms of their accessibility on the other end. So my question is, how does accessibility as an evaluation work here?
So basically, it's a very technical process. So what we are looking in accessibility is, so we'll set up a standard in the Richmond region that what would be the average time for people to go to jobs or healthcare or groceries. Let's say by autos, it's 30 minutes for the job, maybe 45 minutes by transit. So once we have the full implementation of the projects, we will calculate what is the difference in accessibility based on the improvements that was provided by those projects in that particular time frame. So let's say in the base year, a certain TAZ or a block group population can only access to maybe 1,000 jobs within a half an hour time frame by autos and maybe 45 minutes time frame by the transit. So once we do the full implementation of all the projects which were funded by the LRTP, we calculate that again. And if in same time, in 30 minutes, those population are able to reach more job location, let's say 1,000, so that means we have an accessibility benefit. So that's how we are calculating it.
Hi, this is Louise Lockett Gordon. I have a question about, I guess, the timing of these topics. If I understand the list, if they're written in terms of when we would do these things, my question is about, should the environmental justice and accessibility assessment come before we talk about the universe of projects and project scoring? It would seem to me that that can impact, you know, where we concentrate on projects and how we score them. And I would think that that would need to come beforehand, but happy to hear back.
Yeah, I think that's the topic of discussion throughout the MPOs nationwide, to do the environmental justice and accessibility analysis before the fact. Normally, this is done after the universe of projects, or let's say the constrained list of projects have been developed. And this is basically doing an evaluation of the plan. So there have been talks throughout the nations, and we are actively tracking that on how to include this before the fact. We haven't, I don't think so any MPO has done that yet, but we are open to that.
Yeah, so I would suggest maybe we're one of those leading NPOs. I think that information would be valuable to frame the rest of that discussion. But that's me.
But you need to understand that the accessibility calculation is based on two different scenarios. So what we can do for the base year, that we won't be able to compare the accessibility. We'll just know what is the accessible number of jobs which can be reached from a certain location. We won't be knowing what exactly the change of accessibility is based on what project improvements we have funded. So it's just going to be one scenario.
All right, are there any other questions, comments, concerns for staff on the future meeting topics? It seems like we have a lot of things to cover in the next several months that we'll be providing some feedback on. The next meeting that we have tentatively scheduled is September 24th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Before we adjourn, are there any final comments from staff, committee members?
And Champ here, one other, back to your issue about potential meeting topics, I think it would be germane. The new transportation bill passed at the House, and obviously it's still in the Senate, but if that were to go through by September 30th, should we maybe be brief? Because I think that should give us a framework that we'll be working on potentially for the next 10 to 20 years. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. If it's yeah, I think the FAST Act expires September 30th, right? So yeah, we should get something new, and yeah, staff can brief about that, whether there would be any major change based on the new legislation.
I mean, we're hearing a lot of good things where funding will be opening up a little bit, especially when it comes to multimodal. I know from a bike bed standpoint, it looks great. So I think, we ought to hopefully frame some of our decisions based on the environment we'll be in, hopefully 6 months from now.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great point, Champ. I did want to provide a little bit more information. We are having an update from our National Association of MPOs. They're going to be providing a reauthorization update at the CTEC meeting on September 17th. So that's a public meeting. Anybody who is willing who is able is invited to listen in. We'll also be recording it and putting it on the web. So that kind of update will be provided in mid-September.
All right, seeing that there aren't any other comments, I think we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone for participating. I guess we'll be on the lookout from staff for an update on the agenda for the next meeting and any other further information we may need to provide.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.